Good morning. Let some people log in here. Good morning. I'm going to give it a few more minutes, let people log in. Hi, Lydia. Hi, Murphy. Hi, guys. Hope you got early bowling on Saturday, 7:45, huh? For the regional tournament to Brendan and William. That's some hardcore bowling at 7:45. Just gonna give it another minute or so. Got a lot of people here, almost. This year, though, William, the tournament's at where we bowl, at Andy B's, not in, where was it the last couple of years? In Sapulpa. So, alright. Well, I was really hoping we'd be back at school today, but it's not my decision. Someone else makes those decisions. So, anyway, I hope you had a chance to watch the video. Sorry, I don't know when this whole thing started with, and Lydia and I have bounced us back and forth, with videos being blocked or not accessible if you're signed into the school's Chrome account, I guess. Yeah, under cashahall.com, and so a teacher has to so I gave that video, and then someone, I think Amelia, emailed me and told me it was blocked. So I unblocked it, probably around before 8:30 or so. So I hope you had a chance to watch it. That guy's a professor from Oxford, but he makes a lot of short videos like that, and he kind of makes things, in my mind, kind of understandable. So, anyway, a lot of that you already knew, but okay. Well, before I noticed this morning on the news that you'll be all so thrilled to know that Kim Jong Un, who hasn't really been seen in public, with his wife, also both of them haven't been seen in public at least for a year. There's been photos of them, but no, in public, where they've been with an audience or something. So they're okay. They're good. I don't know if you remember, didn't seem like a year ago, but maybe it was less than a year ago. They were starting to speculate that maybe he was dead or he was dying, but apparently not. So, okay. Well, let's get back into where we left off. Now, this is where I'm. Now, if I lose you here, just hang on. It takes me a few minutes to reboot my browser, or restart it. So I won't be gone for long. But this seems to be always the point where if I'm going to lose everyone. right, just as soon as I said it, that's what happened. Maybe I shouldn't talk about it so much. Let's try it again. And it's not the software, it's my computer that's causes this to happen. So I should start a GoFundMe account or something. Alright, let's try it again. If it knocks me off again, then just hang on a minute. Okay, well, this might get old here. Let's try it again. I'm trying to see if I'm doing anything wrong. No, I don't have any big windows open. Okay. Alright. Let's just try it again. Okay, bear with me if it goes off again. Maybe it's going to work. Okay. So we were into this thing about Crito. So just to summarize where we left off, showed Socrates' jail cell, where he's a few days away from being executed, and he's got a plan to bust him out of jail. And in fact, it wasn't really that hard to arrange. Wasn't even that expensive to do this. And not only that, but not only has Crito bribed people and convinced people, didn't take too much, but to let him walk out, and of course he has to agree to leave the city of Athens. That's something important too. He has to agree to. He can't just go roaming around Athens all of a sudden. That way, then that doesn't make the authorities look that good. But Crito enters the jail cell almost assuming that Socrates is going to be happy about this arrangement that he's made, and that he'll be happy to leave with him. And obviously, pretty much right away, Socrates disappoints Crito with this kind of answer that, well, it's kind of what you'd expect from him. I guess Crito, like the city of Athens, thought, okay, after almost a month in jail, and with your death looming and heavy on your mind, you'll be willing to leave. You'll be willing to go. And when I come to you with this offer, okay, so the bribes have been paid. Everyone's going to turn their back and just let it all happen. They don't really want to kill Socrates anyway. They'd rather claim, oh, I don't know, he escaped. And Socrates tells Crito, oh, well, I've got all these principles that I depend upon, and I've made all my decisions here, at least in his adult life, based upon reason and reflection, and I've established these kind of principles that I make decisions by, and unless you've got some better principles to tell me about right now, then I'm sure that I probably won't agree with you. So that's what he's been thinking about the whole part of the time, at least, is this is what's happened. One thing, and if you read it, you might have picked it up, because they just mention it briefly, but and this is kind of profound, and it figures into his decision making, and that is that Socrates never, well, and his, so what is he? He's 70 something, early 70s. He's never ever left the city of Athens before. So if you can just imagine, Athens, I think in that video the guy said that Athens at the time was about 100,000 people. So it wasn't even, that big of a town. We have kind of, I don't know what you call them, medium-sized towns, I guess, or even small to medium that are 100,000 people in Oklahoma that, there's, I don't know, it's not that big of a town really. But he lived there his whole life, but not only has he lived there, he's never left, he's never gone to any other cities. And it's interesting, I think today we kind of associate people who are wise and kind of worldly and knowledgeable, we even call it worldly, that they've traveled, they've seen some other cultures, seen some other places, experienced life other places. And apparently the only time Socrates left even the confines of the city was when he was involved in, when he was younger, he was in the military and they did some maneuvers or something outside of the city. Other than that, though, 70 years all within, what wouldn't be the city of Athens today, which is actually pretty sprawling and large, world city, but within a much smaller Athens. So, that's kind of interesting culturally, I think, because it wasn't like people couldn't travel. As we've already talked about, that his friend Chaerephon is even the one who went to Delphi for him, or not for him, but on his behalf. So not even then did he make any kind of like a pilgrimage like that or anything. So he's been happy in Athens, but that's going to play into his decision. So let me move ahead here and find where I want to pick up. Let me see here. Crito, of course, is arguing with them and trying to, convince them that he should go, and it would be to his benefit to go. Let me see here. All right, I should look this up already, but I was doing other things. Okay, yeah, it actually is. I remember now. It's a little ways even in the book, in the text that we have. Okay, so let's start right about here. Socrates says, "Then we ought not to retaliate or render evil for evil to anyone, whatever evil we may have suffered from him. But I would have you consider, Crito, whether you really mean what you're saying, for this opinion has never been held and never will be held by any considerable number of persons, and those who are agreed and those who are not agreed upon this point have no common ground and can only despise one another when they see how widely they differ." But what they're talking about is this unjust thing that's happened to Socrates. And Socrates sees right away, and this is the first principle he applies, that we don't return evil for evil. So evil has been, laid upon Socrates, this unjust condemnation of him and his pending execution, but to escape would also be evil, and he'll explain that better. But so that would be returning evil for evil, and that we should abstain from doing that. And he believes that's actually kind of the common creed of most people when it comes to things like this, although I wouldn't say it's a common creed of everybody. Okay, so that's the first kind of thing he gets in or talks about. All right. I'm going to skip down a little bit more here. All right. So through this whole, Socrates has a lot to say. He has these longer quotes here, and really Crito's got these really kind of short lines, almost as if there's a certain immediacy to them and them needing to get out. He'd like to not have, maybe he's trying to curtail any long, he knows how Socrates gets, and so he's hoping to maybe almost have Socrates mirror his actions by making these short little, quotes. That's a longer quote right there from him. And Socrates has these longer answers. But let's start right here though. So Socrates says here. No, sorry, I want to go a little bit further. Yeah, here we go. Right here then, and this is where I was saying yesterday that, or day before yesterday, that Socrates is talking about more lofty things up to this point, and Crito's talking more about it when he says something is really just encouraging Socrates or pushing Socrates in the direction of escaping, and maybe because of that, inequity where they are, mentally, Socrates makes the discussion more with this imaginary, I wouldn't say imaginary entity, but he has a discussion with the law, or with the laws of Athens, let's say. And so he kind of cuts Crito out of the discussion for quite some time, directly out of it. And he has this, I'll say, it's not an imaginary discussion. Obviously the laws can't come into the jail cell with him, but he speaks for the laws and he speaks for himself. And so here's what he says. Then the laws will say, consider, Socrates, if this is true, this is where I'm starting right here, that in your present attempt you're going to do us wrong. For after having brought you into the world and nurtured and educated you and given you and every other citizen a share in every good we had to give, we further proclaim and give the right to every Athenian that if he does not like us when he has come of age and has seen the ways of the city and made our acquaintance, he may go where he pleases and take his goods with him, and none of us laws will forbid him or interfere with him. Okay. Well, that sounds familiar if we understand what he's saying. That the city of Athens here has done their part. They've held up their side of the bargain. Brought you into the world, nurtured, educated you, given you a share of every good that the city had to give. And if you decide that, at the right age, whatever that is, come of age, okay, we have different special ages in American society too, of 16, 18, 21, I don't know, 25, something important maybe. There's certain little milestones here. But whenever they come of age, whatever that is for Athenians, and they've seen how we do things here, let me read on here. When he has come of age and seen the ways of the city and made our acquaintance, it's a real good personification, right? As if you're meeting a person, hey, nice to meet you, and get to know somebody. You've made an acquaintance with the city. He may go where he pleases and take his goods with him, and none of us laws will forbid him or interfere with him. Any of you who does not like us, this is the laws and the city itself here, and doesn't like us in the city, who wants to go to a colony or to any other city, may go where he likes and take his goods with him. All right. Yeah. So if you decide, when you turn whatever age, however old you are, at some point you maybe decide, all these people threaten all the time. Oh, if so-and-so gets elected, I'm going to leave the country. Well, they never do. Not that I know of. But guess what? If they decided to leave the country, no one's going to stop them. You're free to go. There's no one at the gates. There's no one at our gates today would be customs or immigration. Or whenever you leave the country, you have to, pass through customs and maybe you have to declare or tell an agent like why you're leaving or where you're going, how long you're going to be gone, all these things. And okay, so some of you have traveled overseas, But if you said, I'm moving to Belize, or I'm moving to Switzerland, or I'm moving to Nigeria, well, they're not instructed to tell you, oh, you can't do that. Yeah, give me your ticket, I'm going to tear it up. You can't leave. You can go there for tourism, those places. You can go there to stay for a little bit, but you can't move. You can't just leave. Yes, you can. Yeah. They're not going to tell you anything. There are not people waiting at the gates of the United States telling you that you, as a citizen, can't decide to leave. Yeah, same thing here. So you've decided how things work. You've had a chance to see how things operate. You've had a chance to see how the government operates, how society, how economics, whatever it might impact you, judicial system, okay, justice, how it's distributed and how it goes, how it works. You've had a chance to see all that. Yeah, I don't know how old you have to be to know that. 18, 21, one of those ages. And then, if you don't like it, you can go. And the law doesn't forbid you from leaving. That really wouldn't be very much freedom, would it, if you were forced to stay. When we think about countries that force people to stay, don't let them leave for any reason, but especially if they're going to leave and not come back, yeah, we think about places like North Korea, as I mentioned, right? Earlier with Kim Jong-un and his whatever problems he's had. That's the kind of place. But, okay, Athens is not that way. The United States is not that way. Most Western democracies don't work this way. Most countries in the world don't work this way. I mean, they do work. They work this way as Athens did. But here's the but, okay? So there is something that might, in his mind, ethically hinder him from. But he who has experience of the manner in which we order justice and administer the state, and still remains, so you know how things work, but you stay, has entered into an implied contract. There you go. So Tuesday I said something about social contract theory, how this is kind of a short introduction to that. But he doesn't obviously have that terminology. That comes along much later, but he's talking here about an implied contract, meaning it's not a contract you sign. You don't sign a contract with the country. We don't sign contracts to stay here and to be loyal to the country. It's an implied contract, not a written one, not even a verbal one, really. We not generally, right? I mean, some people take oaths to the military or to law enforcement or things, but even those people, when they're free to do so, would be free to leave. But, okay, you've entered into an implied contract that he will do as we command him. Yeah, we're the laws, and we have rules. We are the law. And once you decide to stay, once you know how things operate here, and you decide to say, you're kind of contractually bound to us then. And he who disobeys us, meaning just decides to go anyway, is, as we maintain, thrice wrong. First, because he's disobeying us and he's disobeying his parents. Secondly, because we are the authors of his education. And thirdly, because he's made an agreement with us that he will duly obey our commands, and he neither obeys them nor convinces us that our commands are wrong. Now this sounds all very constitutional, right? We have laws, and you live here, and you are bound to follow those laws. You have agreed to, just by staying here. And you've made an agreement, this implied contract, that he will duly obey. And there's another route, though. Doesn't mean that maybe there is not an unjust law. There could be unjust law, and there's a method. We have it also in our Constitution, but it existed here as well, that you could try to convince the powers that be that this law is wrong, or it's unjust, or it's hurtful, or whatever it might be. It says wrong here. And you have a chance to come tell us and argue for, to change such a law. So we have the same thing here. We have the right to redress grievances, and we can do that any number of ways. And but I guess most effectively we would be able to do it through our redress or recourse through the government, whatever. Maybe it's local government, maybe it's state, maybe it's federal, but there are ways to address laws that we feel are wrong. Okay, so But you, Socrates, you've stayed here. In fact, Socrates, let's make it even more profound. You've never left. You haven't even seen what the rest of the world's like, or what the but you've chosen to stay here day after day after day after day. You certainly know how things work here. You know how things go. Maybe you felt some things were wrong or unjust, but you never came to us and complained about the laws, not in any formal way. So yeah, you're in this contract. You're a big part of this contract, personally, because you spent all these 70 plus years here. You've never tried to come to us and change anything. Never been to court before at all. Never tried to change anything through that avenue. So yeah, and now this happens, and now you want to leave. Yeah, now, or maybe you're thinking about leaving because of this thing that happened with your court case. Well, let's go on then. So, our commands are wrong, and so, okay. And he neither obeys them nor convinces us, here we go, that our command, and we do not rudely impose them. Again, more personification, this idea that we're going to have certain rules, and we're going to, like, of a household, we're going to really impose them on you. Yeah, we don't, but again, the laws are there, and as long as no one changes them, they'll remain the law. And yeah, you're free to go if you don't like things. So we're not making you live under these laws unless you decide to stay here. But give them the alternative of, again, they mentioned of obeying or convincing us. This back to the idea of redressing the grievances. That you're obeying us, you're going to do that, that's what most people do, or convince us that these things are wrong. And that is what we offer. And he does neither. Yeah, in fact, if he escapes, that's what they mean. He doesn't try to convince us they're wrong. He doesn't obey our laws. It's illegal, it's illegal to break out of prison. If you're in prison, and no matter how unjust you may feel that what happened to you it's still illegal to break out of prison. In fact, I've never been in prison before, thank goodness, but I know this happens to people. They're in prison, and when if they you don't hear much about escapes anymore because everything's so technologically sound, really, with prisons, but occasionally there's a prison break or a jail, people break out of jail. Well, if that ever happens, when they catch you again, and they usually catch these people, when they catch you, you get years added on to your sentence for it. They don't just throw you back in and say, there you go, serve out the rest of your 6 months or something. No, they tack on more time. It's illegal. It's illegal. So here he's not obeying or convincing us, and he is going an alternate route, which is to defy the laws, even though he's entered into them willingly and stayed there for these years. Later on in this paragraph, he talks about the only time that he's really left. If you read this further on in this paragraph, and I may be a bit wrong, but I think that's the case. It was a military thing, and okay. So anyway, so you can see Crito really is not really. It's almost like he's giving up right away, but here he's going to let Socrates have his say here. So there is no help, Socrates, right? Okay, so Socrates goes on to say, then will they not say, and these are the laws speaking again, you, Socrates, are breaking the covenants and agreements which you've made with us at your leisure, not in any haste or under any compulsion or deception, but having had 70 years to think of them, during which time you were at liberty to leave the city. So this gets repeated again and again. So by leaving, you're breaking the agreement, this contract you have with us, and you made the contract, you metaphorically signed the contract at your leisure, No one was, holding your head underwater or torturing you to agree to all this. There was no deception. Things were open. You saw how things worked. You had 70 years to think of them. So if you didn't think things were all right, you were at liberty to leave. And if we were not to your mind, or if our covenants appeared to you to be unfair, you had your choice and might have gone to Lacedaemon or Crete, which you often praise for their good government, or to some other Hellenic or foreign state. Hellenic being part of the Greek world. Whereas you, above all other Athenians, seem to be so fond of the state, or in other words, of us, her laws. For who would be like the state that has no laws? That you never stirred out of her the halt, the blind, the maimed, who were not more stationary in her than you were. Yeah, you're fully capable of walking away, and now you run away and forsake your agreements. Yeah. So, yeah, he repeats this in different ways. I think it's eloquently stated. And again, we're into kind of this social contract theory, if you want to. Not a bad idea for a senior thesis here, where you can compare this with social contract theory. It's an idea. You need to find a better topic than what I just said, but something within those ideas. Okay, so he mentioned that, and somehow Socrates picks up on this thing about that there are friends of Crito's in Thessaly who will be happy to help and will take him in, and no one's going to give him any trouble in Thessaly. He can live there and live out the rest of his life, raise his children, educate them, all those things that 70-year-olds do, I guess. And this is, one other part of the problem is this. Let's say that, we already know from the trial that if Socrates even were acquitted, he's going to walk out of the courtroom and continue doing what he's been doing. If they put him to death, he's going to go into the afterlife and keep doing what he's been doing, but he's going to question people who are also in the afterlife, people who passed before him. But let's say that he leaves with Crito. I'm kind of summarizing this next part here. Excuse me. If he leaves with Crito, he'll go to Thessaly, and he's going to keep talking about honor and virtue and democracy and justice and all these lofty ideals. And it seems like this would be puts him kind of in a precarious position now, because it would make him almost hypocritical at this point. Because some person would say, yeah, I understand, I agree with what you're saying about justice and freedom and all these lofty ideals, but wasn't it you, though, when you were in jail and the tables were turned and everything was against you, you just left, right? Like you didn't follow the law, you didn't have any respect for democracy or for the freedom the state had given you during your life. You left, you came here. So it kind of sets up a problem, of hypocrisy, I guess, he could foresee happening. And he also thinks that if he goes there, that he'll anger people there as well, and that the same kind of thing will happen there that's happened here. So, yeah, that could be a problem. So, here then, let me see here. All right, let me just finish this here because it's not a very long thing. So he talks a bit more about this and about Thessaly and versus Athens and where he should stay, whether or not. And of course, the whole thing is, he gets back to the whole thing about it would just still be returning evil for evil if I escape because of. So he at least maybe acknowledges tacitly that that what's happened has been something unjust. I don't know if he says evil, but that's been wrong. And yeah, but then escaping would be returning evil for evil, and that's something he doesn't agree with. Um, and so a larger thing, and we'll talk more about it here as we get back to regular classes, but a larger issue is that Socrates, as he's already mentioned in the trial and other things you read, is he's focused on the soul. And that soul goes on to live even beyond this life. And so the most important thing, is as he said in Apology, is the improvement of the soul. That's where our focus should be as far as he's concerned. So as long as he's alive and he has the ability to improve his soul, he's going to continue to do that. And by escaping and returning evil for evil, he believes that he's damaging his soul, that he's doing damage to his soul. Whereas the goal, and we'll see what this leads to, the goal is for Socrates is to every day to improve your soul, and he believes you improve the soul by acting virtuously. And in this case, the virtuous thing to do is to stay and to take the punishment. Obviously, earlier in his life, he could have left, and he could have fled Athens and thinking that they were some kind of unjust state, but he didn't do that. He didn't try to change the law. He didn't leave. He stayed there all this time. So at this point, it would be a wrong and an evil, return for an evil, which would, again, damage his soul and move him in the wrong direction. Now, what that all leads to, we'll talk about later. I think about things like, let's say that we had another war that started, and it was a war where we needed to have a draft, and they're drafting young men between the ages of 18 and I think that probably 18 to 25, let's say first. Now, everyone who's 18 to 25 registered for the draft. They knew the draft was a possibility. They knew that when they registered for the draft that you would be, there's the possibility you'd be called up for service in a right situation. But at that point, past the age of 18 and older, the state, the United States, will have decided then that you're obligated, that you have an obligation to the state, and if they call you for service, and we have really not many other things that do that. We ask you to serve jury duty, pay taxes. There's I guess if you're called into military service, then you're required to go. But there were people in the Vietnam era who left the country, who went to other countries, mainly to Canada, to escape the draft. And I have to think that Socrates would have looked down upon that idea of evading the draft. That by the time the draft came, you had a chance to you had a chance to kind of see how things work. It wasn't like the draft was a secret. You knew that other people got drafted. Could be you next. But you can make a good argument. Maybe 18 is a bit too young. That is, the day you turn 18, you get a draft notice, and you got to go down to the draft board and see if you qualify to be in the military. Well, that might be a bit young. You can make that argument. You haven't had a chance, as Socrates says, to come of age at 18 and make the acquaintance of the city yet, or the laws that we have. But that's an interesting parallel. Again, this could be something you could add into a possible senior thesis idea of obligations as citizen to state, and apply this idea then of the draft and things that we're asked to do, or we might be asked to do. So just this last little bit here, and I think Crito's just about had enough, and Socrates maybe knows that and says, "This is the voice which I seem to hear murmuring in my ears." He doesn't hear Crito's voice. He hears the ideas he's talking about. "That I seem to hear murmuring in my ears, like the sound of the flute in the ears of the mystic. That voice, I say, is humming in my ears and prevents me from hearing any other." Like yours, Crito. "And I know that anything more which you will say will be in vain. Yet, speak if you have anything to say." Pretty much says, you're not going to convince me otherwise, but if you have something else to say, just let me know. And Crito says, "I have nothing to say, Socrates." "Then let me follow the intimations of the will of God." That's how he sees it. Okay, so we'll finish that. I'm going to go ahead and stop there. We're almost done. And I will, hopefully, I will see you guys tomorrow in person, okay? And we'll get back to more regular stuff. All right. Hopefully see you tomorrow. If not, I'm sure Monday.